Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is a list video on the most likely future requirements. These are almost guaranteed to be a prerequisite for something, not necessarily a galactic legend. There's not an exact order here, but you can think of general ranges and tiers of likelihood. We're going to start with what I think are less likely and go to the items that are basically guaranteed to be required at some point in the game. The point of this video is to say if you have a mature account and you haven't finished these farms and it's not going to distract from what you're already doing, finish these farms. Get ahead of the game. At the bottom of the list, more of an honorable mention outside of the list, is the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter. This ship technically has a home with the Finalizer, but I was pretty shocked it wasn't required as a prerequisite to get the Finalizer. The only reason I can think of is because the Raddus didn't have an equivalent ship to gate the Raddus, and they didn't want to do that when they conceived of the event. And a lot of players haven't farmed this thing because it detracts from guild store farms, primarily gear. But I wouldn't be surprised, because it is a guild store exclusive, that at some point it technically becomes a requirement. The Sith Fighter. Right now, every ship in the game, for the most part, has some sort of reason for existing. Either they're part of a fleet, they are part of an event or a prerequisite, like Lando's Falcon has the cargo ship event, Ebon Hawk I think has a cargo ship event, and is a prerequisite for the Raddus and the Finalizer. The Sith Fighter has nothing like that. There's no reason to farm this thing right now, and because of that, a lot of players have not. And I would expect that at some point that could change with this ship. One word to the wise though, do not put this ship at the end of your reinforcement bench, thinking that you're filling up some slots so it doesn't get called out. This ship has priority for reinforcement. I threw it on my defense once, and it was the first ship called out, and I had an opponent do the same thing in Grand Arena, and it was his first ship to be called out. So leave this thing off of your defensive bench. And for the end of the ship tier, and a more obvious one, is the Razor Crest. It's brand new, but because of the difficulty in how to obtain the Razor Crest, and they've already said that these Conquest exclusive farms, possibly within a year, might end up in the Journey Guide instead of becoming farmable. Expect the Razor Crest to, maybe a long time in the future, but at some point, to be a requirement for something. So don't take your time getting this thing. Once it moves over to the Conquest store, make sure to have some spare currency to throw at it and stay ahead of any potential requirement. Starting off the character tier, at the bottom of the list, we have Visa Smar. She is undergeared and underfarmed by the player base. This is the player data from SWGOH.gg. You can see here that the majority of the players didn't even bother to put any gear on her. She's at gear level 1, 110,000 players. And then when we look at the number of players who have farmed her to 7 stars, that's only less than 100,000 players. To give you a reference point, Bastila Fallen is like 250,000 players have her at 7 stars. But her lower development stats aren't the only reason why I think she's a candidate. She's also a Galactic Bounty character, and right now 7 out of the 10 Galactic Bounty characters are required for something. I wouldn't be surprised to see that number tick up to maybe even be all 10 Galactic Bounties being a prerequisite for something. Now we have the Sith Assassin, similar kind of case where the Sith Assassin, another Old Republic character that's been underdeveloped by the player base. Here's the player data on the Sith Assassin. You can see that a lot of gear level 1, but also a lot of players have brought her up to gear level 8, about 100,000 in both cases, and 7 stars, only 183,000. So even Bastila Fallen is still 100,000 more players have Bastila Fallen at 7 stars. I've said previously in my Darkside Galactic Legend prerequisite speculation video that the Sith Assassin was going to be a prerequisite, and that is because the Darkside Galactic Legend I think is going to be very Sith focused and Sith heavy. When you take a look at Sith Eternal Emperor, that was much more of an Empire faction Galactic Legend than it was Sith. So I'm expecting to see a number of Sith requirements on that GL. Sith Assassin being one of them. Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum. Had this been several weeks ago before the reveal of Commander Tano, Fulcrum would be higher on this list, but Commander Tano in a lot of ways supplants her as a prerequisite requirement for something. But Tano is still a Galactic Bounty character. She is a slow farm out of the fleet store, and she's underdeveloped by a lot of the player base. So when you look at her player data, we see that the majority of players have left her at gear level 1, but a decent amount have her at gear level 8. With the number of players who have farmed her to 7 stars, that's at 231,000, and this is the number of players who have accounts on this website. That's 231,000, and that puts her in range of Bas-Lashan Fallen. The Gamorrean Guard. This is a pretty useless character, but he is a Guild Store exclusive farm, and Guild Store exclusive farms have a high probability of becoming a prerequisite at some point, so finish your farms. He has been speculated for a long time as being a potential requirement for something, including he was a part of a lot of Jedi Knight Luke speculation for a long time. Now, when we look at the player data, we see just how underdeveloped he is. With the number of players who have him at 7 stars, only 84,000. That's one of the lowest counts I've paid attention to. And with the gear level distribution, almost everyone has him at gear level 1. And if people bother to gear him up at all, they stop at gear level 8. Almost nobody has him at relics. I think maybe only has a relic Gamu, and few others. Ki-Adi-Mundi, one of the rarest, if not rarest characters in the game. More players already have relic Jedi Master Kenobis than relic Ki-Adi-Mundis, and that's not a surprise because this is a GOTB exclusive character that is very hard to get, much harder than the dark side version with Wat Tambor. You can get that with gear 11, gear 12 characters. Ki-Adi-Mundi needs higher relics, and there is still an RNG component there. Maybe the Bad Batch will make things easier, but it's still a little unclear. Now, a quick look at the player data. You see just how low these numbers are 2,600 with relics. Most of the player base, if they have him, is at gear level 8, and that's because of the amount of Kairos. And only 9,000 with a 4-star Ki-Adi-Mundi and 2,800 with a 7-star. And again, this is for players who have an account on this website. More than the rarity and the low level of development among the player base of Ki-Adi-Mundi, it is the territory battle exclusivity that makes Ki-Adi-Mundi basically guaranteed to be a future prerequisite for something. Right now we have 2 out of 4 territory battle exclusives that are currently required as a prerequisite, and I would expect that number to someday become 4 out of 4. And you knew it was coming, the Imperial Probe Droid, the final of the territory battle exclusive characters that are currently not required for anything. The Probe Droid for a long time was on my short list for characters I was terrified would become a prerequisite, because I was a 5-year player who did not have a 7-star Probe Droid. I only just got Probe Droid to 7 stars within the past month. And among players who have SWGOH profiles, we are looking at 135,000 players with a 7-star Probe Droid. Most of them have Gear 8 or Gear 1 Probe Droids, and only 2,448 have Relic Probe Droids. That because of the exclusivity, because of that low level of development and that low level of obtainment among the player base, makes the Probe Droid a highly probable candidate for a sooner prerequisite requirement. Beskar Mando, he is the most recent character added to the game on this list. He is a journey character, the only journey character that you can be attempting the event before level 85. All the other ones you have to hit level 85 first. All of his requirements are pretty easy to obtain. They're pretty easy to gear, relatively speaking. Mando is the only one that requires Chirotechs before gear 11. And because of how player-friendly they made him as a character, I would guarantee that at some point we see Beskar Mando as a prerequisite for something in the game, possibly a future Galactic Legend when we see new seasons of Boba Fett or The Mandalorian. Looking at the player data, just for a quick reference, I'd said we were going to do this with every character, but I think now we're going to. 52,000 players who have SWGOH profiles have him at 7 stars, most at gear 8, several at relics. Mine is at gear 12. Darth Traya. She is a slam dunk. She will be a prerequisite for the next Darkside Galactic Legend. Raid characters are prerequisite characters. Han was one for Luke. Kenobi was one for Jedi Master Kenobi. You can also anticipate bringing her up to higher relics. Han was relic level 6. Kenobi was relic 8. Traya will be somewhere in there, probably more of a relic 7 because of the lack of lore implications for her specifically. And since we've done it for the others, let's take a look at the player data. 234,000 have her at 7 stars. Majority have her at gear 12 at about 100,000, and we're looking at about 46,000 for relics. So if you have a mature account, those are all the farms that you should be finishing if you can. If you have a younger account, don't get distracted with this stuff. Just keep it in the back of your head that maybe as you finish certain stores or finish certain galactic bounties, start filling in those holes in your roster for the future possibilities that characters on this list become prerequisites. So thank you for watching. Be safe out there, everyone, and be excellent to each other. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.